Radio, TV, and Local 23 News present RGV History Revisited with your host, Marlene Rodriguez.
Welcome to RGV History Revisited, a 30-minute show just about history in the Rio Grande Valley. I'm your host, Marlene Rodriguez. Although the Rio Grande Valley may be small, it is saturated with fascinating history, including an ancient bridge that took years to be discovered. Let's hear more about it.
Where we're at is an excellent example. If you didn't know it was here, you wouldn't know it was here. This is two stories in one situation. You have the old Alice Road coming through here. You can see the remnant of it, very abandoned behind me. And then right there, where that marsh is the subject of the story. That is where Puente de los Negros was at the time of the Civil War. Now, that particular bridge there's almost a misnomer as to who knows where it is. The other one of late into the 20th century is over towards Highway 77. They took the crossing, abandoned this one, and moved it over there and kept the name of the bridge, Puente de los Negros. Now, how did that happen? At the time of the Civil War in 1863, this was a bustling thoroughfare through here. You had the Cotton Road, and this was the road to Alice. From its stage headquarters there, the stagecoach headquarters at Washington and 13th, all the way to Alice, this was one of the longest roads in the valley. Now, you don't even know it's there. There's only two short segments that have the sign Old Alice Road on it, and that is by Martin Elementary School, and then another one that's over by Media Luna. It is so chopped up. People have lost the whole meaning of where this road goes. All right, let's get back to the Puente de los Negros. Directly after the Civil War, there was a contingent of black troops that were encamped right here. And hence it took on the name, not the bridge, it took on the name Resaca de los Negros. This is actually Resaca del Rancho Viejo, but this is a choked segment of it, and it took on the name Resaca de los Negros, hence Puente de los Negros, okay? There are all kinds of myths out there as to where is Puente de los Negros, what does it mean? One huge myth, it's very pervasive, is that there were black soldiers that were hung after the 1906 riot at Fort Brown. Totally wrong. In all innocence, there was, as I say, a contingent of black troops that were camped here, hence it took on the name. There's another myth that took place that on the other location, on the changed location after 1904, at 1904, when they were making the railroad bridge, there were some workers down in the ravine there digging and making the bridge, and they came up, and the bystanders say, "Ay, mire los negritos." And so it took on that myth, but it's wrong. This is the real story. But if the landscape could talk right here, it would have a most immensely interesting story. This originally was the old Indian Trail. It went from Matamoros all the way up to San Patricio, which is just this side of Corpus Christi. Now, who utilized this old Indian Trail? Zachary Taylor. When he came here in 1846, he utilized the same trail that was in existence from the time, even during the conquest period. So then it took on that name at that point in time. Now, you zip on up to the period of the Civil War. There was so much traffic through here from the cotton blockade and all of the wagons and oxen going back and forth through this point that it was a superhighway of the times. And it actually took on so much of a meaning before this route was abandoned in favor of the route that was over next to what was later the 1904 railroad crossing, because the Resaca at that point is equally as choked, but they chose to abandon this route to go over there. This is a piece of history that was almost forgotten. There were two elements that came together in my research that actually brought it back to life and out of the sector of the myths. to reality. One of which was an old map that I encountered that was 1879, and it was for the Espiritu Santo grant, an original map with all of the details on it that hinted to this. It also hinted to the location, the second location of the Puente de los Negros. So we know that that location was in existence or being used by 1879. Now, the second factor that came into the picture that actually revealed this lost piece of history was a narrative manuscript, memoirs of an old county official that was in Cameron County Courthouse. He was born just after the Civil War, so he was of the era to hear the first-hand reports. He has a little clip in his memoirs that's no longer than 2 paragraphs, and it states the actual fact of this being the original Puente de los Negros.
That was certainly interesting. And in fact, there is a historical marker in the process of being erected that will honor African Americans that served in the U.S. military. And coming up after this, we're going to look at veterans that served in the War of 1812, buried in the Old Brownsville Cemetery. Coming up after the break.